Welcome to Mission Imperfect, the podcast about finding your own path, your own way, and embracing the imperfection of the journey.
We're your hosts, life coaches, former HR professionals, and mums, Kirsty and Catherine.
We love to discuss the topics that come up time and time again for our coaching clients and which affect us all, from things like acceptance and boundaries to values and well-being and everything in between.
Each episode ends with a question for you and us to reflect on. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to grab a cuppa and a biscuit and join us in getting lost in finding ourselves.
Welcome to another episode of Mission Imperfect. This week we are talking about fear. So, Kirsty, this was your idea. Great one. I'm sure we've spoken a little bit about it in other episodes, but we're dedicating a whole one to it this week. So, take it
Yeah,
away. Talk to us about fear.
fear. It feels that we should have some sort of, sinister music going on in the background for this.
Yes, it
Yeah,
does,
like in
doesn't
any
it?
film, when you're supposed to be scared because they play the music, which makes
Yes.
you
The
feel scared,
walking
right?
into the dark woods music, where you think, what are you doing? And they haven't got a torch or anything. What are you doing?
Ooh, and people who go to investigate strange noises in a dark house where the electricity is off. I mean, no, you just stay in bed and pull the duvet over your
No.
head if you had any sense at all. Anyway, moving on. Um, a dictionary definition. I'm not sure we've had one for a couple of episodes. So, a dictionary definition of fear. When I started thinking about this, I found it really hard to define what fear is. I mean, obviously we all know it, but to put it into words, I found really hard. And so the dictionary says it's an unpleasant emotion caused by the threat of danger, pain, or harm. And I think the word that really stood out for me there is the threat,
Yeah.
about it being quite a future thing, isn't it? It's not about necessarily about what's happening right now. It's about what it could happen, might happen, how bad what's happening could get, that sort of thing. And of course, mostly we don't like to feel fear. I guess there are exceptions. There's the adrenaline junkies out there, and all those fans of horror films. I hate horror films. I can't watch them. As I say, I'm reacting just to the music and hiding behind cushions.
Yeah. Me
Um,
too. I'm with you on that front. I'm like, why deliberately scare yourself silly? It does nothing for me. I have to be honest. And yes, I'd agree. It's not when you say that the threat of danger, pain, or harm. I'm thinking, well, none of those things really appeal to they. Let's be honest. But interesting what you said there about threat being the future thing, because I also interpreted like imminent threat.
hmm.
That basically the idea of you walking into those scary woods and you come across the axe murderer. I'm thinking there's quite an imminent
Oh,
threat
it's
there.
always an axe murderer. It's strange, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So you know what I mean? There's definitely
Yeah.
like an imminent threat as well that could be. But yeah, I totally agree. It could be because let's be honest, that hopefully most of us are not the crazy person who does go walking into the dark woods with the scary music towards the axe murderer, but we're also not doing the basic human survival of being eaten by saber-toothed tigers, hopefully, as well, are we? We don't have quite the same, in a lot of cases, reasons perhaps to feel as much fear as we perhaps do. And I think that's probably what we're going
Yeah.
to start talking a bit more about in this episode. So we're
Yes.
not talking about the real genuine heart in your mouth fear.
But yes, that fundamental saber-toothed tiger sort of fear. I love that we come back to saber-toothed tigers in things. That's always a useful reference point, the old saber-toothed tiger. But I mean, okay, well, why are we talking about fear? Let's try and get back on track, having got distracted by tigers and scary music and axe murderers, as you do. Um, so I mean, fear, it holds us back, doesn't it? It can sort of keep us small, that fear of how things might be, what could happen,
Yeah.
and trying to avoid that stops us trying to do anything, or it can stop us from trying to do different things that take us outside of our comfort zones. And that fear of what might happen, of how bad things might get, it tends to skew your thinking when, about what is actually happening. I mean, for me, a good example of this is if you're in the midst of sort of challenging physical exercise, that fear of I can't keep going, I'm not going to be able to keep going, stops you recognizing that actually you are, you are keeping going. You are doing the thing. Your fear is about what might happen in the future, whether that's, you know, imminent, and it usually is for me in the middle of a run, that imminent fear that I'm going to die any minute now. Um, I'm just not going to be able to keep putting one foot in front of the other. But all the time I'm thinking that I am putting one foot in front of the other. And when you get caught up in the fear, it's very easy to overlook that. And certainly for me, that changes things, that realization that whatever my fear of what's happening in the future right now, I'm dealing with what's happening. And and I think fear can be really isolating because often we think we're the only ones experiencing it. Sometimes with really big fears that are commonly shared, that's different. But I think perhaps in a lot of our more day-to-day fears, you can often feel like the only one who's afraid of something in particular, who feels as fearful as you do. And you don't want other people to think badly of you. And we sort of hide our fears, we don't talk about them, we don't want to be thought silly. And we can feel very unsupported and alone when we're afraid, can't we?
Yeah.
So it's all of that that is why I thought fear was worth talking about. And at the other end of the spectrum, being fearless tends to be seen as a really good thing, doesn't it? Something to aspire to just to have no fear. Um, and it can seem really appealing, but very often that's confused with being brave. And I don't think it's the same thing at all, because
No.
if you're not afraid, you don't need to be brave,
Yeah. That's so
right?
true. I love that. I think you summed that up so perfectly when you said if you don't have any fear, then you don't even have to tap into bravery or courage. And I think that's so not the case, isn't it? I think a lot of people are able to tap into bravery to be able to. I don't like this phrase. I'm not sure how you're going to feel about this one. The feel the fear and do it anyway. I'm not sure how you feel about that. I have slightly mixed views. I kind of get
Mm.
the essence of it, which is basically don't let the fear stop you in your tracks, which is kind of what we're trying
Yeah.
to say today. Not with the tiger, because then you do want to absolutely be on
Run.
the move
Yes.
pronto. Um, but yeah, we're wanting to be able to let that be the deciding factor. We want to be able to kind of subdue it or rationalize
Mm.
it or not just let the because what's actually happening, I think it's called the amygdala, isn't it? That's the part of the brain that's being triggered, it's taking over, it's that fight or fright, and
Yeah.
and we're not thinking logically and rationally, and we can't then tap into the courage and all these other things to go through it. So yeah, I think that's a really good point about fearlessness. Oh look, we've managed to get a lessness in there, like
Fearlessness. Yes.
selflessness.
Fearlessness. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, and what you're saying there, going back to the good old saber-toothed tiger, but fear is fundamentally a survival instinct. Our sort of more primitive ancestors who didn't feel fear, who didn't think that rustling in the bushes could be a saber-toothed tiger, and better take some action about this, were the ones who got eaten by aforementioned saber-toothed tiger. And so that kind of genetic propensity to respond to fear helped your survival. So without it, we'd be plunging into all sorts of dangerous situations, quite merrily and probably not emerging from them. Well, certainly not in one piece anyway. And
Bit like the knight that we spoke about in another episode with his all his limbs disappearing bit by bit.
come back and fight a coward. Yeah. Um, but fear and excitement, I don't know if you've heard this. It's something that is pointed out quite a lot. Fear and excitement have the same sort of physiological symptoms. My understanding of it is that if you measure somebody's physical reactions when they're afraid and when they're excited, they are the same. It's basically the spin we put on it that makes the difference. And I wouldn't want to be without excitement. It'd be a pretty dull world if you couldn't feel excited about life. And that seems to mean that, it is fundamentally the same thing as fear. So it's part of the balance, it seems to me.
Yeah, it's almost like a bit of a fine line between them. And I've just thought of a really I'm not sure if it's a brilliant example or a terrible example, but I'll share it anyway. So
Yeah.
we took my daughter to a theme park in the summer, and there was this roller coaster that she was so gung ho, like yeah, let's go on that. And both me and my husband were like, really? You really want to go on it? And it's one of these awful looking ones where they have the vertical start and then you sort of dangle at the top and do a beyond vertical drop. After that, I thought I can cope with the rest. I can even do the loop. Don't mind that. It's that vertical start and the beyond vertical drop. And I was watching people do it and I just thought these people are insane. And it was so fast. But I just thought I just don't like the start. I just thought I can't. Anyway, so I was definitely feeling the fear as I was watching it, and she was so keen to go, and I was like, you know. So I thought, right, damn it, this was my idea to come to this place. I'm going to have to do it. Thankfully, I say thankfully, there was no queue, so it literally was like get straight on
Oh,
the
that's
damn thing.
helpful. Yeah.
So I didn't have time to really stew and panic about it, and I probably was feeling fear and excitement at the same time because I thought I'm going to be so proud of myself slash sick when I come off. But yeah, and but I have to say that that vertical, I do not like looking up at the sky and not seeing anything. You know, you can't see the track. You don't know how much more. Oh, it's awful. It was so, and it took forever. Luckily, we didn't dangle for too long, and that plummet was over very quickly. And I screamed my head off. And then after that, I was fine. So, yeah, it was. That's probably quite a good example of fear and excitement being very close together.
Yeah.
Afterwards, I was like, I'm not doing that again. Fortunately, I think she was okay with that. I think it was scary enough for her as well. So
Oh my. Yeah, I'm impressed. I'm impressed. I don't like rides, partly because I easily get travel sick in a car going in a straight line. So rides that go up
oh
and down.
yeah.
I mean, my stomach was reacting to your description of that ride.
Yeah, luckily I hadn't just had lunch or anything like that. Otherwise, I think I might have seen it again. But it was actually kind of good fun. But there was definitely that really fine line for me, and and
Yeah.
you see other people love this stuff, and they were like they could easily just go straight back on. And I don't know whether it's some of it is a I've got a bit less brave with some of these things as I've got older. I
Mm.
don't know, but I definitely was fearful about going on it. If my husband had said I'll do it, I'd have happily plonked him on instead of me, but he didn't, so I had to.
I had that with my son at ride. I think it was called the Hollywood Tower in Euro Disney. And my son was only 10 or 11 at the time, but it goes, you go
Oh
up a
yeah,
lot of levels and it drops you.
knee drop. Yeah, hideous.
And my son's father refused point blank to go and he doesn't do heights. And I ended up saying I would go because he was desperate to do it. I don't like heights either, and I get sickness and there was a long queue and I was getting more and more scared as we went. And then we get to the point where we're actually at the doors to get into the lift thing to go up. And Josh looked at me, don't worry, Mum. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? We probably won't die.
Oh, real nice.
At which point, the people next for the queue of the door on the other side started laughing, and you were not helping. You were really not helping. But yeah,
Did you do it? I have to know. Did you do it?
I did do it, and actually, it wasn't that bad.
Okay. Oh, well, see,
I,
that's interesting, isn't it? Because
yeah,
sometimes, well, we've spoken a bit about this before, haven't we, with what if? That we sometimes think it's going to be a lot worse than it actually is. And in fairness, reflecting, the going up for mine was worse than I thought because it was so slow and hideous.
mm,
But the drop, which was the bit I was really dreading, because beyond vertical, I mean, why would you do that to yourself? Why is vertical not enough? You have to do more than
say,
vertical.
yeah,
That bit I was really dreading, and it was over so fast. It was like, oh, okay, thank God that's
we're done.
done. So it wasn't. So it sounds like you experienced that, oh, it wasn't as terrifying as I thought because yeah, we often forget that that can be the outcome too, can't we?
Yeah, absolutely. It's once and this ride that I went on, once it had dropped to the one time, and you didn't just keep going and crash horribly. That what if had been dealt with.
Yeah.
Oh, it does work. It's okay. Um, but I think that being fearless completely fearless probably isn't a good thing. I think it would lead you into too much danger and it would probably take
Agreed.
away some of that excitement of life. So maybe it's better to aspire to fear less than to be fearless. Um, don't I think I'm actually, funny enough, I am, by coincidence, I'm wearing tonight a sweatshirt with somewhat fearless written on it. And when I first saw it, it was kind of, oh no, I don't, it felt like that was an aspirational thing to become somewhat fearless. And then I had a time of thinking, well, maybe it's not enough. Maybe I should just be totally fearless. And somewhat fearless is a bit of a cop out. And I think actually somewhat fearless is about right.
Yeah. Well, it's a bit more succinct than just the right amount of fearless, to put on a sweatshirt. Because that's
Yeah, I
kind of
wonder if
what
they
it means.
considered that option here.
Yeah. I like that though. I like this idea of maybe fearing less. We're not saying be totally fearless because I think that would have some dangers and possible repercussions to it. But we also don't want it to take over. So let's talk a little bit about fearing less and how
Yes,
we do that.
let's. But one thing that we always talk about, I think, because it's always important, is awareness. And that noticing and acknowledging of what you're feeling, of what's going through your mind, or maybe your stomach in the case of fear. Um,
Yes.
it's about noticing and acknowledging your fear rather than denying it or hiding it or trying to push through it or pretend it isn't there or pretend you don't want what's on the other side of it. Take a moment to just go, yeah, hello, fear. That's what I'm feeling. This is what this is. It can, well, I think we say this every time. It sounds weird, but it can make a difference just to observe it honestly and openly. In fact, in quantum mechanics, there's stuff about it's the observation of a particle that changes what the particle's doing or sort of sets what it's doing. So maybe it's not that ridiculous after all. Maybe there
No.
was something scientific there. But
So if we were going to do an episode on quantum physics, I think we'd have to sit here in silence. I don't think I'd have
yes,
anything to add.
yes, I once did try to listen to Brief History of Time, but that's another story entirely. We're not going there. Right. And another thing we can do to start trying to fear a bit less is basically risk assessment. And we've already mentioned the whole worst case scenario thing, but actually that tends to be what's at the forefront of our minds. How bad is it going to get? The worst thing that's going to happen. So taking a look at what the threat actually is, that your worst case scenario, how likely is it? And how would you deal with it if it did happen? When you start doing that, it creates a very different sense of perspective on it and reduces that fear of the unknown aspect that's going on.
Yeah, I
And
think that's so true because fear does often come from uncertainty, doesn't it?
yeah,
That's because we don't know exactly what's going to happen, and so we're fearful of what might happen. So I love this. It's really practical, a risk assessment, and
yeah,
and just putting that in context of that right. I was seeing people coming off alive. That was a good sign. I thought, possibly looking a little bit queasy, but I did know, truthfully, that it was going to be over very quickly. I might feel a bit of that awful lurching stomach for a moment, but it would also pass. And I might actually find it fun, dare I say. So there is a very practical way of looking. Obviously, it's situation dependent, but you can actually be quite practical and do
mm,
this risk assessment of what fear is actually about rather than just sitting with the sort of anxiousness that can come with fear of like, oh no, and the dread and the stomach knots and all that kind of stuff. You can actually sort of tune into, well, what is this causing this, and does it have grounds? Is there a real basis to this,
yes.
or perhaps not as much as I thought?
Yeah, that's so true. And in I think a lot of our kind of everyday fears, when if the fear of trying something new in case you make a twat of yourself when you do it. Yeah, what is the likelihood of you making a twat of yourself? Well, in my case, it's quite high usually. But what's the impact of that? What damage is that actually going to do? Um, and when I start looking at it like that, it changes how I feel about it. Well, as long as I'm laughing at myself, the people who are willing to laugh with me, maybe at me, but certainly with me, um,
Hopefully with.
uh, that's all good. And the people who are going to judge me are probably not people that I really actually am bothered about anyway. And
Yeah.
when I can start seeing things like that, it eases the anxiety around it. I'm not suggesting it completely takes it away, as we're talking about being, fearing less as opposed to being fearless. And I think it does help to reduce the fear. Although I would not be in favour of a detailed risk assessment form like you have to do for various health and safety things. And
No.
no, I don't think. I mean, if that's what turns you on, go for it. If you want to come up with a really detailed form and boxes you can tick to manage the fear, that's brilliant if it works for you. But you certainly don't have to. Just saying.
No.
Uh, and something this may sound a little bit odd in the context, but being aware of your values and your priorities in life. How much does what's on the other side of that fear matter to you? How how is doing the thing that scares you going to benefit you? What does it mean to you? Is it that important, basically? And if it isn't, why put yourself through the fear?
Yeah.
No. And if it is, then there's your motivation and the knowledge that there is, that's your best case scenario, isn't it? That you are doing something that really matters to you.
Yeah. Love this. And you said this so well. When you're really debating about doing something or not, and the fear is the factor, you said, and I think this is so helpful in answering this, is
Mm.
which do we think is going to feel better, not easier, which I like you put that caveat on it. Is it accepting the fear and not doing it, or approaching what could be on the other side of it? And I think that's really helpful because, like you said, sometimes the fear might be a bigger factor than that potential reward, but you can make that decision rather than it being made for you.
Yeah, yeah. So sometimes fear is giving you a useful message about it's not worth doing this.
Yeah.
Do not go into the dark woods to meet the axe murderer.
Yeah.
And sometimes yes, do step onto the stage and do that public speaking. You will get your message out there and you will feel great for having done it, as opposed to being dead in the woods with your head chopped off. It's there isn't a one size fits all answer, but be honest with yourself. That again, it's back to that awareness, isn't it?
Yeah.
And kind of linked to that, I think, is in some contexts you can flip the fear. What is it that excites you about doing whatever it is that's making you afraid, about facing that fear? Obviously, there are a lot of situations in which that's not appropriate. When it's fear around somebody's abusive behaviour or there's a serious physical threat, whatever. I'm not being completely lighthearted about this. I do recognise that, you know, there is not always going to be the flip side. But very often in our sort of what I've referred to before as the kind of the day-to-day fears, if there is an excitement about doing that new thing, what could be on the other side of that for you? Tap into it, use it. And I think something I have found very helpful is asking yourself, what does the scared part of you need? What can you give yourself that is going to help? Because very often it's like, if it's your inner child, a scared inner child doesn't want to be told off, doesn't want to be mocked. It doesn't help. It doesn't want to be forced into doing it
Yeah. That's
in
exactly what I
spite
was
of
just
their fear.
thinking. Just like forced into doing something isn't necessarily the answer either.
Yeah, exactly. That child okay, maybe they'll get on and do it, and maybe they'll learn something from it, but they'll probably be quite resistant to putting themselves into that position again in the future.
Mm.
What they actually, and on the other hand, there will be some people who may respond well to that. It's about knowing yourself and what you need. But if what the scared part of you, your inner child, whatever you like to call it, needs is reassurance and support and encouragement, maybe a big hug, then give it to them. give yourself what you need in order to deal with the fear. And that idea of sort of mentally giving your inner child a hug, that little squeeze, that little "you're okay, you can do this" sort of, I've got you, we can do it together, it's okay to be afraid. It it makes a weird difference, positively, a good weird,
Mm.
even though it might sound a bit mad. But so often we just beat ourselves up and try to just push through. It comes back to what you said earlier about, the mixed feelings over feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? Because I think that's a bit like it's here. Oh well, carry on. It's almost to me, is there possibly some steps missing? And it doesn't mean it has to work that way for everybody. I think this is what we always say. Just consider some of these things that might be useful for you. Because I can definitely see, how he responds to a situation that we're feeling fearful or anxious about. For me, just trying to push my way through it doesn't really work for me. Not often anyway. Um, so I can definitely see that that kind of technique would be helpful for me. And definitely the risk assessment. I like quite practical things. I like to try and pull things apart and take some of that emotion away from it because I'm aware that fear is an emotion and it's sort of ruling the show. So I need to try and detach from that and bring some other things into the picture. I think that's what works for me. So I think what
Yeah.
we're trying to do is just give some suggestions of how obviously it's going to be context specific. And I've always remembered this phrase that I heard, and I'm afraid I can't remember who from, but it stuck with me. And it was that regret weighs heavier than fear. And I
Mm.
thought, wow, that's such a good expression. Obviously, context specific, but I thought that's such a good point. And the reason I think it's so tricky is because, of course, we don't get the regret till later, do we? Whereas the fear is what we're facing now. We're having to make that choice now. Do I face my fear and do it, or does the fear win, for want of a better expression? We have to
Yeah.
make that call. And maybe later the regret might come, oh, I missed that opportunity, or I'll never know if, because you'll never be able to answer that. So that's probably more that kind of sort of, I call it the hat in the ring type scenario
Mm.
of feeling the fear of applying for this job or speaking on that stage, like you just said. I think that's a really good example when you kind of can think to yourself, okay, it may not go perfectly. Perhaps I've tried. Perhaps my message was helpful to one person. I don't have the regret of not doing it and not sharing it with anybody at all.
Yes, that regret thing, and I think maybe that's a more succinct way, perhaps, of saying what I was trying to say around what really matters to you about this and what's on the other side of the fear, isn't it? But yeah, that regret aspect, which one's going to bother you the most? The
Yes.
the
Yeah.
regret of not
Yeah.
having not done it, or the comfort of having not done it. Which is it going to be? And my final point would be trust yourself. Trust yourself to cope with whatever happens. Maybe there isn't, and we've talked about this before, that there are not wrong decisions or right decisions. They're just decisions. So whichever decision you make, whether you listen to the fear and don't do the thing, or you deal with the fear and do the thing, just trust yourself to cope with whatever happens. It'll be okay. You can cope with whatever the outcome is.
Yeah. I'd agree.
So obviously we have to have a quote or two, and one that I've found that really spoke to me was from I think she's an American writer called Marilyn Ferguson. Ultimately, we know deeply that the other side of every fear is freedom. So maybe not every fear, we're going back to murder, but a lot of our fears, yeah, that there is a sense of freedom if you do find that way of dealing with them and moving forward with them or reducing them.
Yeah, exactly. And that leads quite nicely onto this one. I think this is quite well known. attributed to Franklin D. Roosevelt, but the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And I think the point being that that's the thing that can become magnified,
Yeah.
can't it? And be more of the issue than the issue itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and Rosa Parks says something that really lines up with that as well. She said, I have learned over the years that when one's mind is made up, this diminishes fear. Knowing what must be done does away with the fear. Yeah, it's an interesting approach,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's
Part
well
of it
said.
is the decision. So, a question. We have to have a question.
Always.
So, what fear, past or present, are you embarrassed to admit to, and what has helped or could help you to deal with it?
That's a great question. So I have picked a I was going to say past one. It probably might. It still maybe has a little bit of presence, but far less so. And it's speaking up. I often didn't want to perhaps be in the limelight or have attention on me, rock the boat, or possibly offend or say the wrong thing. All those
Mm.
things you might associate with potentially speaking up and putting yourself out there. All the time, but there were definitely times when I probably held back because of a fear of how I might have come across, or all those things I said, rocking the boat, drawing attention to
Yeah.
myself. But I found I I care less. Oh, this is interesting. Care less about it. Not totally fearless about it, but I'm not as bothered about it these days, because partly because I think I have more self-belief, which is something we've spoken about
Mm.
before, that this my sort of base level of being okay with who I am and what my opinions and views are. Like, if I don't have something worth saying, I won't bother, and that's also okay. I'm actually comfortable with not having to say something, but I'm far less likely to find myself having to hold back for some of those reasons that I perhaps used to have, because I think I do have sometimes an opinion that's worth sharing, and it also becomes annoying if someone says the exact thing that you were you were perhaps already thinking, and everyone goes, "Oh, that's brilliant," and you're like, "Damn it, I
That
should
was
have just said
mine. Yes.
it." Yes, that was my idea, but you can't then go in and swoop in and claim it, can you? No, not purely for those reasons, but you do realise that actually, what's
Yeah.
really the worst that's going to happen from speaking up. So
And what's the best
yeah,
that
I
could
wouldn't say I'm
happen?
perfect at it, but well, we go for imperfect anyway, don't we? So that's all okay.
Mission imperfect. Well done.
Exactly. Yeah, do it imperfectly. What about you?
Well, I can really relate to what you just said, and I love the fact that two people who admit to having been afraid, still having some fear of speaking up, are here doing a podcast. How cool is that? Um,
Yeah,
but the one that I always found it embarrassing to admit to was just walking into a room of people. Um, still not entirely comfortable doing it, but the physical symptoms of fear that I experienced have definitely drastically reduced. It used to leave me sort of shaky and sweaty palmed and yeah, all very nasty. Um, but it would be all that catastrophizing around nobody's going to talk to me, or if I try and talk to them, they'll blank me, or they won't be interested. I'm going to be humiliated. I'm going to be the only one that nobody talks to. It's going to be awful. Um, and I could just keep that sort of loop of doom. Can you have a doom loop? I quite like the idea of a doom loop. Keep the doom loop going round and round and
I don't
round
want
and
to
just
be to be honest, but
well, I don't like the idea of having it as a concept. And doom loop getting bigger and bigger and bigger and stronger. And of course, it, I think that the fear actually got worse over a long time because I built it up into something bigger than it needed to be. I mean, what's really helped is, and continues to help, is looking at that worst case scenario more rationally and coming up with coping mechanisms and also exit strategies. Sometimes I give in to the fear or I accept the fear that this is not a place I want to be. I'm not comfortable being there. These are not people I feel the urge to talk to. And fair enough. But not every time. And I do find it easier to to approach people, to make conversation, to worry less about the fact that they'll think I'm a total idiot. I guess I just got used to people thinking that, to be honest. And yeah, if your default position is people are going to think I'm an idiot, um, it's the only way is up from there.
Yes.
It's,
I love it. We were talking about being fearless, but we also managed to get in there care less and worry less. So
yes,
I think we did quite well there on a complete fluke. So just to repeat that question for everybody listening, it is what fear, past or present, are you embarrassed to admit to, or maybe you're not embarrassed to admit to, and what has helped or could help you deal with it? And hopefully, some of the tips we've shared today will be helpful. And we will share anything in the resources in the show notes. And I have a blog on that regret weighing heavier than fear, for example. So we'll make sure that is shared.
absolutely. So until next week, just just do it. Feel the fear and do it anyway, unless you don't want to, in which case give in to the fear and be proud
Yes.
of it.
Yeah,
Your choice.
exactly. Perfect. Okay. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Mission Imperfect.
Please visit the show notes for details on how to contact us and for any resources we may have on the topic discussed.
Until next time, keep being imperfectly you. No one does it better.